The foreclosure notice didn't arrive in an envelope. It arrived in a smug little folder slid across my kitchen table like a tip at a bad restaurant. Melissa Grant, the HOA president, didn't even sit down. She just tapped the paper and said, "Sign it, or the bank takes your farmhouse." I stared at the red stamp at the bold letters that made my stomach drop, and all I could think was, this table is older than her entire neighborhood. Then she added almost casually, "You should have paid what you owed." My name's Jack Mercer. I'm in my 40s, and I moved out here for quiet, not drama, not politics, not some suburban power game. My family's had this farmhouse and the land around it for generations. Long before Maple Ridge Meadows was a glossy brochure and a sales office with cookies. 40 acres, a barn that leans a little chickens that don't care about anyone's rules, and a gravel driveway that has been mine as long as anyone's been alive to argue about it. I like my mornings simple. Coffee, feed buckets, and silence. Maple Ridge Meadows sits right up against my property, like it grew overnight. Identical houses, identical mailboxes, the kind of place where people wave because they're supposed to. And hanging over all of it is the Homeowners Association, the HOA, with its neat little bylaws and its obsession with control. Melissa Grant ran it like she was elected mayor of a small country. Blonde bob pressed blazer phone always in hand, and that smile that says she's already decided you're wrong. The first time she showed up, she didn't say hello. She said, "You're behind on your assessments," like she'd caught me stealing from a register. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so ridiculous, it didn't fit in my brain. "My assessments," I said. "I'm not in your HOA." She flipped a page and pointed like a teacher correcting a child. Boundary Revision 2010. You're within our jurisdiction. You owe $12,000 in back fees and $50,000 in penalties. Penalties. Like my land was a parking ticket. I asked her what exactly I'd been penalized for. She didn't say something. She listed it, like she'd been rehearsing. Unapproved structures, she said, glancing toward my barn. Livestock nuisance, non-compliant fencing, unsafe roadway. And you're operating without community approval. Community approval for my own farm. I told her she had the wrong property, wrong records, wrong everything. She didn't argue, she just tilted her head and said, "If you don't sign an agreement today, the bank will handle it." That's when it got real, because the next morning my phone rang and the caller ID said, Cedar Valley Bank. The loan officer sounded nervous, like she was reading bad news off a screen and hoping I'd hang up first. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "we need to discuss an active foreclosure action tied to an unpaid obligation related to Maple Ridge Meadows HOA. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I just went quiet, because when a bank says active foreclosure, the world goes narrow. "I don't have a mortgage with you," I said. "I don't have a lien. I don't have anything with that neighborhood." She hesitated. "The file shows an HOA assessment lien, and it's been escalated." Escalated. Like my life was a customer service ticket. For a few days after that, everything felt off. I'd walk out to the barn, and I'd see people standing at the edge of their yards, watching whispering recording on phones, like I was the entertainment. Then Melissa held one of her community meetings, and I didn't even have to attend to feel the damage. Neighbors who used to wave stopped. People who used to nod like normal humans started acting like I was a hazard. One guy, clean polo shirt, crossed the street to avoid me, like I was contagious. I wanted to laugh again, but it didn't come out. The part that really turned my stomach happened 3 days later, when Mrs. Eleanor Price knocked on my door. She's in her 70s, sweet, steady, the kind of person who says honey without trying to manipulate you. Her hands were shaking as she held up a letter. "Jack, they said my house is in default," she whispered. "I've never missed a payment in my life." I took the paper and saw the same formatting, the same language, the same exact tone, like a template. Foreclosure notice. Escalated action. Immediate resolution required. And right there in the middle of it, Maple Ridge Meadows HOA. I felt my jaw tighten so hard it hurt. This wasn't Melissa keeping the neighborhood clean. This was her using a system to scare people into compliance. And now she was dragging others into it. That night I sat at my kitchen table, the one she'd slid that folder across, and I just stared at the wood grain like it was going to answer me. I'm not proud of it, but for a minute I thought, what if I missed something? What if there's some filing, some stupid technicality, Some county map that got updated while I wasn't looking. Not dramatic, I'm questioning my entire life. Just that ugly, practical fear. The kind that whispers, maybe you're about to lose everything and you won't even know why. And then I got mad. Because even if there was some paperwork screw-up, even if there was, you don't threaten an old woman's home to win a neighborhood argument. You don't manufacture a lien like it's a party invitation. You don't get to rewrite reality because you printed it in bold font. So the next morning I went to Cedar Valley Bank in person. I didn't call. I didn't email. I walked in, asked for the loan officer by name, and sat down across from her like I was about to negotiate a merger. Her name was Janet Collins. She looked exhausted, like she'd been pulled into something she didn't understand. I want the original documentation, I said. Not a summary, not a screenshot. The source. The county record reference, the lien filing, the authorization. She swallowed. The HOA provided the file, she said. They said they had chain of custody. I leaned forward. Chain of custody is what people say when they're trying to make something sound official. Banks verify. That's what you do. Janet's eyes flicked to the side toward a glass office where someone in a suit was watching us like we were a problem. And that's when I realized this wasn't just Melissa pushing paper. Someone inside the bank had been letting it move. I left without raising my voice, but my brain was already running. I called the county recorder's office, pulled the parcel map, pulled the deed history. The boundaries didn't magically change in 2010. My land was my land, always had been. Then late that afternoon, I got a knock. I didn't expect Nora Kowalski. She lived 2 streets over in Maple Ridge Meadows, mid-30s, sharp eyes, the kind of person who doesn't scare easy. She didn't step inside. She just handed me a sealed envelope and said Melissa tried to buy my signature. Inside were printed emails and a form titled Sworn Affidavit. Melissa had written in plain language that if Nora signed stating my chickens were a public health hazard and my driveway was unsafe, the HOA would waive her dues for 2 years. It wasn't vague. It wasn't implied. It was a deal. I exhaled slow. Why are you bringing this to me? Nora's mouth tightened. Because she tried it with my neighbor too, and because she's bragging that she can make the bank take whatever she wants. That was the pivot, not some movie moment, not fireworks. Just a clean, ugly piece of proof that turned this from, he said, she said, into here's what she did. So I started building a file the way I build anything serious, organized, dated, backed up. Emails, printed notices, county records, the bank's call log, Nora's affidavit, Mrs. Price's foreclosure letter, screenshots of HOA announcements that claimed authority over properties outside their map. And I didn't send it to Melissa. I didn't threaten her. I didn't play her game. I sent it to the Fraud Investigation Unit, and I requested an immediate audit on all lien-related actions tied to Maple Ridge Meadows. Within 24 hours, Cedar Valley Bank went into panic mode. Not because I yelled, because paperwork started moving above Janet's head. Meetings got scheduled. Compliance got involved. People stopped answering with chain of custody and started using words like exposure and liability. Melissa didn't know that part yet. She was still walking around like the queen of her cul-de-sac until she felt the floor shift. The next evening, Maple Ridge Meadows held an emergency HOA meeting at the clubhouse. Cars packed the lot. People buzzed like they were there for a show. Melissa stood at the front with a microphone trying to look composed, but her eyes kept darting to the door. When I walked in, the room quieted in that tense, hungry way crowds do. She forced a smile. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "we're prepared to offer you a settlement if you cooperate." I didn't sit. "I'm not cooperating with fraud," I said. "I'm cooperating with an investigation." Her smile twitched. "You don't understand what you're involved in." "Oh," I said, and I let the pause hang just long enough. "I understand perfectly." That's when the doors opened again, not for drama, just business. 2 investigators' badges out, followed by a bank compliance officer with a folder thicker than Melissa's entire personality. Melissa's voice went sharp. "This is a private meeting." The lead investigator didn't blink. Not anymore. Melissa tried to talk over them, tried to control the room. She kept saying procedural and authority and community standards, like those words were magic spells. Then the compliance officer flipped open the folder and said, calm as a spreadsheet, "We have documentation of attempted inducement for sworn statements, falsified lien filings, and unauthorized escalation requests." Melissa's color drained fast. "That's not..." And that's when she made the mistake. people like her always make. She tried to run the narrative instead of dealing with reality. She jabbed a finger at me and snapped, "He's lying. He's harassing the community. I cut in, still not yelling. "Mrs. Price is 72 years old," I said. "Explain why your HOA triggered a foreclosure notice on her house." That landed like a rock. Heads turned, murmurs grew. Someone in the back said, "Wait, what?" Melissa's mouth opened, then closed, because there isn't a smooth answer to that. Outside through the clubhouse windows, I saw a moving truck at the edge of the lot and Melissa's assistant near it shifting boxes like they were trying to disappear a problem before it got subpoenaed. The investigator noticed too. He nodded once and another agent stepped out. Melissa's voice cracked just barely. "Those are personal items. Then you won't mind us securing them," the investigator said. She looked at me like she wanted to set me on fire with her eyes. "You think you've won?" she hissed. I didn't smile. "I think you finally met paperwork that doesn't care about your title." The last thing she did was reach for her phone, frantic shaking like she could call her way out of it. But the compliance officer calmly said, "Ma'am, your access to HOA accounts and authorizations has been suspended pending review." Melissa froze because that was the real power, not the microphone, not the bylaws. Money and access. And in that moment, she had neither. They walked her out while the room buzzed in that stunned, uncomfortable silence. No cheering, no clapping, just the sound of consequences arriving. And as the doors closed behind her, I looked around at all those neat lawns and perfect mailboxes and thought one simple thing. Control is easy when no one challenges it until the receipts show up. Lesson: when someone uses the system like a weapon, the only answer is evidence.